Another week has gone by in the NFL season, which means we're 1 week closer to identifying how the draft board is going to shake out for the 2025 NFL draft. And now we have the Raiders and the Giants with the first 2 picks. And I feel like that's kind of what it's going to be come April. I think they are kind of separating as the 2 worst teams in the sport this season. But I also think this is better for some of these mock drafts when we're still in the month of December, because I do think 2 quarterbacks likely go first. And the Raiders, they're a team that really needs a quarterback. And I've been really outspoken about who that quarterback for the Raiders should be. They have a lot of ties to Shedeur Sanders of Colorado. Tom Brady, the new minority owner for the Raiders, he is known as Shedeur's mentor. And of course, we have Shedeur Sanders taking a picture of the Raiders stadium, posting it on a story, dapping up Mark Davis at a Las Vegas Aces game. I mean, the connections go on and on and on. I do think this is kind of a match made in heaven. And if the Raiders do get this #1 overall pick, which becomes increasingly likely every single day, I think Shedeur Sanders ends up in Vegas and becomes their next quarterback. And for the New York Giants, they also need a quarterback. They have been trotting out Drew Lock for the last several weeks since they cut Daniel Jones, and he's just not very good. And the Giants team in general is not very good. I think there's a good chance that they kind of start a whole new regime with a new quarterback. I know there were some talks about bringing back Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, but with how things are kind of unraveling right now and how ugly it's getting, I think it's an increasing chance that they just completely start fresh, and they're going to need a new quarterback to begin that new rebuild. And I think Cam Ward from Miami makes a lot of sense. These are the 2 top quarterbacks in the draft, I think, at this point in time. Cam Ward, very interesting player, fantastic off-script playmaker, but he does need to work on a couple of things, staying in the structure of the offense, going through his reads, finding the open receiver. We kind of see some issues like that with like Caleb Williams this year. I've talked about it a little bit on the channel. He has to be able to play on script better if he wants to reach his full potential and become one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, he can still be a great playmaker, make a bunch of really nice plays, but if he's going to be worth that #2 overall pick, he's got to have a coach that can help him to stay within the structure of the offense a bit more. The Patriots are an interesting team because I think they could just go best player available, and that probably is Travis Hunter. I think they could go wide receiver. You could go Ted McMillan. You could even go Luther Burden. You could go on the offensive line. The Patriots, I feel like you're going to have more clarity during really free agency, whatever they kind of address. There's been a lot of reports that they want to pay T. Higgins a ton of money. If they go out and pay T. Higgins $20 million a season, maybe more, then I think this is best player available. Maybe an offensive tackle like Will Campbell. I've seen a few mock drafts that have Sanders, Ward, and Hunter as the top 3. So I'm going to change it up a little bit and have the Patriots go with Will Campbell here, the best offensive lineman, I believe, in this class. Probably better suited to play guard. I know everybody kind of mentions it. He doesn't have super long arms, and he has run into some problems against good pass rushers in the SEC, just not really having the length to hold those guys off. So I think Campbell, he has the versatility, though, to play either tackle or guard, but the Patriots, they probably do have the worst offensive line in the league. And so in this scenario, they sign T. Higgins or another receiver for a lot of money in free agency. They're all about surrounding Drake May with all the talent they can get, and now they get the best offensive lineman with a 3rd overall pick. And now the Carolina Panthers, I'm going to have the Panthers here go Travis Hunter. I think this would be a really fascinating fit. Who knows if Deion Sanders would allow Hunter to go here? I mean, I feel like he may be able to create some controversy if he does not want him to go to a certain team. But the Panthers, they have been turning around their act. They've actually been really competitive the last several weeks against some really good teams. The Chiefs, the Eagles this past week. The Panthers are trending in the right direction. So I think if you could get a player like Travis Hunter to be really help out their secondary, maybe even be a kind of cool piece on offense to help out Bryce Young, that could be a really cool pick. So I'm going to have Travis Hunter go #4 to the Carolina Panthers. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars at #5, another team that could go a ton of different ways, but I'm going to go Will Johnson from Michigan. I think this does just make the most sense. Their secondary is probably one of the weaker units on their entire team. Will Johnson, if this was any other draft and there wasn't a Travis Hunter blue chip type player, I think Will Johnson is the best cornerback in the class. And some people might even argue just pure cornerback versus pure cornerback. Maybe Will Johnson is better than Hunter. I wouldn't say that quite yet, but I would hear the argument to be made for that. But Will Johnson, still a very, very good player, can play zone, has great instincts, can play man as well, has good size for a cornerback. And the Jaguars, they get their best player available, and then they also fit a major need on their team. I think this makes a lot of sense. The Titans at 6, I do think this could potentially be a quarterback spot, but I think there's more and more optimism that Will Levis will be back another season there. They'll try and build around him one more season. If they do that, they're probably going to want to use a wide receiver. So Tedero and McMillan, I think he's the guy here at number 6 to Tennessee. McMillan has great size, a great contested catcher. There has been some talk, though, how he will separate at the next level, if he can be a guy that creates a lot of separation or not, if that will limit his ceiling as a player. But I think for the Titans, who do just need another weapon on offense, really Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has been like their wide receiver 1 this year, unless you want to count like Calvin Ridley. So they need some more help on the outside. If they really want to see what they have in Will Levis, I think you go out and get maybe the best receiver in the class. I think he's probably the best one. I think he has the clearest path to being a true X wide receiver, and there's not many receivers in this class that you can say that about. Now, the New York Jets at number 7, I'm going to go an interesting route here because there's another connection. I just love these connections when making these picks, especially in December. There's been a connection to a quarterback at the University of Penn State, and it has to do with Garrett Wilson talking about Drew Allar as the best quarterback in Penn State history. We even have Allar commenting on Olu Fashanu, who the Jets drafted in the first round last year, saying, Jets, 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 Jets. I think Drew Allar could be a fit in New York where they're looking for a new quarterback. And the Jets, they're kind of known as a huge wild card because Woody Johnson is their owner. He's known for doing some crazy impulsive things. I think Drew Allar is a quarterback that has all of the tools. He's like over 6'5", has an absolute howitzer of an arm. He has some movement ability. I wouldn't say he's the most athletic guy in the world, but he definitely can extend plays. He can definitely pick up some first downs with his legs. And I think if in the playoffs for Penn State, they win a game or two and he looks good, I really do think Allar could shoot up draft boards. I've been seeing a ton of people talk about him lately. I'm not going to be that guy who was like, yeah, I was on him first, but I was talking about Allar in like October as somebody that could become like a first round quarterback and move up the draft boards a lot during kind of the combine offseason stage because of all of his physical talent. And I do think we could see Allar continue to rise up boards. I mean, we saw the same thing with like Anthony Richardson and Zach Wilson. And who drafted Zach Wilson? That would be the New York Jets. So I think they could fall for another very physically talented quarterback and get their new guy to help with this new regime, and Drew Allar from Penn State. Now the Browns are up next. I really want to have Abdul Carter go in the top 10, but I don't think the Browns here would use their number 8 overall pick on a pass rusher or even like Mason Graham on the interior of their defensive line. So I'm going to go with Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. I think he's a good fit for the Browns, who do need some help at tackle. They've had a ton of injuries at that position this year. Who knows what route this team's going to go in this offseason with the quarterback position. Jameis Winston, will he be back? Deshaun Watson, will he be back? Will he even be the starter next year? I know the Browns still have to pay him a ton of money, but that doesn't mean necessarily that he has to be their starting quarterback next year. So maybe the Browns take a flyer on a quarterback inside the top 10. Maybe they go out and sign like Sam Darnold if he becomes available. But we're going to go with a tackle here. Kind of just a huge position of need for the Browns. A very good player as well, who has a lot of experience under his belt. So let's go Kelvin Banks Jr. to Cleveland. And the Bears at number 9. This does make it a little bit complicated because I kind of wanted to have Banks or one of these top tackles go to Chicago because they really need help on the offensive line. But with Abdul Carter sitting here, I'm just going to have the Bears select him. Just BPA, they could use another pass rusher off the edge outside of Montez Sweat. And you can't have enough pass rushers. And so Abdul Carter, who may be one of the best players in this entire class, falls to number 9 with 3 quarterbacks going, a couple of cornerbacks, a couple of offensive linemen. And the Bears get a real blue chip player here. And I think he would just add a huge other element to that defense, having a very nice 1-2 punch with Sweat off the edge. I do see the rationale for an offensive lineman. Really, the next one off the board could be Josh Simmons, but I'm pretty sure he like tore his ACL a few weeks ago. So I still don't know if he's going to be like a top 10 pick now because of that. And then some of these other tackles are more projects. So I don't know if the Bears would want to reach on one of those guys with a 9th overall pick. And now the Cincinnati Bengals, I think this is a defensive player spot. Mason Graham, one of the best pure players in this draft. I think I'm going to have him go to Cincinnati. They just need help on defense. It's been a joke all season long. I know some people are like, man, Luther Burden, one of these receivers to the Bengals. I can't get there. They need help on defense so bad. Joe Burrow also said that he was optimistic. Maybe they bring back T. Higgins. I don't really foresee that happening either, but I just think you have to go BPA. And I do think Mason Graham is BPA here. And it's also a huge position of need. So I think this is kind of a match made in heaven if Mason Graham can fall to the 10th pick. Now the Saints at number 11 is just another really fascinating team. I have no idea what they could be looking to do, I mean, obviously they could use a ton of help on their defensive line. They could use some help in the secondary. They could probably even use another wide receiver. They could use a quarterback. There's so many different directions that the Saints could go. But I think in this mock, I'm going to have Nick Scorton go here, number 11 overall. In my previous mocks, I did have the Saints get Will Johnson. I think that was a good fit as well, since they did trade away Marshawn Lattimore. You're not going to take a pure guard at number 11, and I don't think there's even a guard you would want to take here. I think I could see an argument for Malachi Starks to be kind of their nickel safety combo. And then quarterback, I just don't think they're going to take one either. I think they're going to kind of go down with the ship the next couple of years with Derek Carr. So Nick Scorton, he's really helped his stock out this year in Texas A&M. He's been an absolute force, really polished player who can be effective in the run game and pass rushing. So I think the Saints just go out and get somebody that can help on their defensive line. They need some help in the trenches, and you can never go wrong with another pass rusher. Now the Cowboys at number 12, I'm going to have them go Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Kind of an interesting pick. I know Ashton Jeanty is a very popular selection with the Cowboys, but Jeanty also is like 5'8". Is there going to be a team that takes a really undersized running back in the first half of the first round? I don't know. We'll see. That's an interesting topic. Jeanty obviously is an amazing player, but there's not a lot of precedent of a running back that undersized going very early in the draft. And the Cowboys, they need another weapon on the outside. It's really CeeDee Lamb, and that's about it. Obviously, could use some help on defense. Jalen Walker naturally is a good fit, but Luther Burden's kind of a fun little selection here. And that could be a really electric passing duo with CeeDee Lamb. I think Burden would be a really nice fit in Dallas, and Jerry Jones, he loves getting the shiny toys, and I think Burden fits that perfectly. Now, the Miami Dolphins at number 13, I'm going to go Malachi Starks. I think in almost every mock draft, this is the pairing that I've had, and it's a pretty nice fit. The Dolphins are losing both of their safeties likely this offseason. Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland are both set to be free agents, and honestly, they both haven't been too good this season. Malachi Starks, I think if he was just a pure cornerback and wasn't listed as a safety or a nickel corner, he could probably be a top 5 player in this draft. He's a very good player, and he could really transform the back end of somebody's defense. I mean, you look at Brian Branch with what he's done with the Lions. I think Starks could have a similar impact. He is that good. And so the Dolphins get a huge piece in the back end of their defense. Obviously, I could see an offensive lineman here, but again, I don't know if you want to take any of these project tackles, number 13 overall, or Josh Simmons, who's coming off of an ACL injury. Number 14, the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to go Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Kind of a hybrid player. He can line up as a pass rusher on the edge, can play just normal off-ball linebacker in the box. Just a really unique chess piece. And I feel like the Colts are kind of missing some of that talent on their defense. Their offense has a lot of weaponry. Michael Pittman Jr., you've got Jonathan Taylor, you got Josh Downs. I think they're pretty fine there. I don't think you should take a tight end number 14 overall. This is also a very deep tight end class. So if you're looking kind of at their needs, which is the back end of their defense and the linebacker position, I think Jalen Walker is a unique fit there and somebody that could be a very nice pairing with some of the other defensive talent that they have. And now the Falcons at 15, I'm going to go another Georgia player, Mykel Williams. I just think the Falcons have one of the worst pass rushes in the entire sport, and Mykel Williams, what he's been able to do against some really nice teams like even Texas in the SEC championship game, Mykel Williams would provide a really big boost to that Atlanta pass rush. He does need some refining in terms of just some pass rush moves, but he has all the physical characteristics. He's 6'5". He's got long, freakish arms. I think Mykel Williams, if he does get some proper development, could emerge as one of the better pass rushers in the entire league. The Arizona Cardinals at number 16, I'm going to go Kenneth Grant from Michigan. They need some help on the interior of their defensive line, and Grant might be the best pure run stopper in this draft. He's 6'3", over 340 pounds. He does need some development as just a pure pass rusher, but I don't really think that's why you're drafting him. You're drafting him to make your run defense a whole lot better. And the Cardinals, they really could use that help in the interior of their defensive line. The Cardinals have the 18th best run defense in the league this year, so below average, and I think just adding more talent on the defensive side of the ball makes a lot of sense. I think they're fine at running back. I think they're fine with Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. Maybe another receiver here, but I don't think you want to take like Isaiah Bond middle of the first round, and especially after you spent a top 5 pick on a receiver last year. So I think fortifying the trenches, you can't really go wrong. Now the 49ers at number 17, I'm going to do something I think a little bit controversial here. I'm going to go Ashton Jeanty to the 49ers. Will this happen? Probably not. Will Jeanty be on the board at pick number 17? Probably not. but this is just a fun pick. The 49ers have had, I think, 3 running backs get hurt this season, and Christian McCaffrey has been banged up all season long. He really has a career of being banged up. Will he come back the same player? Will he be able to stay healthy? What is that really going to look like? Who knows? But all I do know is that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers love their running backs. They love running the football. And if you could give Kyle Shanahan, Ashton Jeanty to that offense, that would be such a fun pairing. And I think if he is on the board at number 17, I could see John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan being super excited and making him a 49er. At number 18, I think offensive line makes sense for the Rams, who are kind of entering maybe another quote-unquote Super Bowl window. Not necessarily that they're going to be a top-end contender, but they only have a few more years left of Matthew Stafford, and I think with how they hit on the draft the last couple of years, they're accumulating a lot of really nice young talent, and I think helping on the offensive line is kind of one of their last huge flaws. And Josh Simmons, as I mentioned, who knows if he'll be ready for the start of next season, but he is a very experienced tackle and would be like a plug-and-play starter, assuming that he is healthy. And I think for the Rams, who don't need like an immediate offensive tackle, I would say, because they have kind of gotten by this year, I think Josh Simmons could be somebody that they take a flyer on, pick number 18. Maybe he doesn't start the season, but then they bring him along towards like the halfway point, and then they plug him in and they solidify their offensive line with a really, really good player. For the Buccaneers at number 19, I have another interesting fit. I'm going to go with Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. What does Todd Bowles really love to do? He loves to have chess pieces on his defense where he can kind of move them around, simulate pressure, and Shamar Stewart is somebody that can play on the interior of the defensive line. He can play on the edge, and I think that's a need for the Buccaneers, is some more juice on their pass rush. Their defense hasn't been as good this year in years past, and I think that is a large part because of some of the pass rushers like Shaq Barrett, for example, who have left, or either kind of just their play is dipped down below. So I think the versatility of Stewart with his size as well, I think does make him a good fit in Tampa Bay, and they get some help for their defense. Now the Commanders at pick number 20, I do think on the offensive line makes a ton of sense. I'm going to go Wyatt Millam from West Virginia. He's been one of the highest graded tackles in the entire country this year, according to PFF. The thing with Washington, though, is they did draft Brandon Coleman, I believe from TCU in the 2nd round last year, and he has been getting some run this year. I don't think he's been great, though, so I do think Washington could invest in another offensive lineman or just move one of those guys to right tackle, because Andrew Wiley, who they signed away from the Chiefs a couple off seasons ago, he's been serviceable, but again, I don't think he's like a top end or even like an above average tackle in the NFL. And so when you have Jaden Daniels and you want to protect your quarterback, I think getting a good offensive line prospect, a guy that has a lot of experience and has really gotten better every single year of his career, I think Millman, he makes a lot of sense in Washington. Pick number 21, one of my favorite pairings in this entire draft is Tyler Warren to the Chargers. So they desperately need more weapons for Justin Herbert. I think that's really clear to anybody who watches the Chargers play. But I still don't think Jim Harbaugh wants to invest in like a wide receiver in the 1st round. That just really has never been his style. I don't think he's ever spent a 1st round pick as a coach in the NFL dating back to even his time with the 49ers. But Tyler Warren, he can inline block. He's a very physical player. And he also is a great receiving tight end. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he's got great hands. He can just run through people. He brings that physicality element that Harbaugh loves to have to his teams. And I just think Justin Herbert, who does like targeting tight ends, Tyler Warren is a really good fit here at pick number 21. The Denver Broncos at number 22. I know a tight end has been a very popular selection here, but let's go with Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Mainly a slot wide receiver, but that's kind of fine for the Broncos because they do have Courtland Sutton. He's kind of their ex-wide receiver on the outside. And Egbuka, he's a great route runner. He can create some separation and kind of be the safety valve for Bo Nix, who does just kind of like throwing to the middle of the field, checking it down at times. Egbuka, I do think, is a good fit. Kind of reminds me of like JSN a little bit, similar play styles. Again, not the biggest guy in the world, not the fastest guy in the world, but he's just a very fluid player, can route run, can get open, knows how to settle down in the zones of defenses. I just think that's the type of player that Sean Payton would like to add to that offense. The Seattle Seahawks at number 23. I'm going to go Cameron Williams from Texas. Abraham Lucas has been one of the worst right tackles in the league this year, and Cameron Williams, he started all 13 games for Texas this year, a few games also as a sophomore last year, so he does have some more development that he could get, but he's got the frame, he's got some pretty good athleticism as well, and for the Seattle Seahawks, who just need some more help on their offensive line, it's really been an issue for multiple seasons now, I think Cameron Williams is worth taking here, pick 23, due to his upside. The Baltimore Ravens at pick number 24, I'm going to go with Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. Their defense has been atrocious this season, and Morrison, he's a guy that can play all over the field. Slot corner, he can play even safety probably if you want him to. He can play boundary corner as well. And the Ravens, they already have a piece like that in Cal Hamilton. Imagine having two very versatile players in the back end of your defense. What that could do for opposing offenses. I think Morrison is a really good fit in Baltimore with what they like to do in their scheme. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he does show really good physicality again. I just think this is a really good fit with what Baltimore likes to do. For the Texans at pick number 25, I kind of want to go running back, but we're going to go away from that this time and go with the defensive lineman and Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Again, one of the best run defenders in this entire draft. And the Texans, they don't really need a ton of pass rush help with Will Anderson and having Danielle Hunter. So adding a big body into the interior of their defensive line, I do think is a hole that they could add and look to fix this year. Already having some pass rush from Tim Settle, who has 5 sacks this year, I think him and Tyleik Williams could be a pretty good 1-2 punch and make the Texans defensive line one of the best in the league. The Packers at 26, I think this is the time where they take a flyer on a really high upside tackle. Rasheed Walker has been, again, one of the worst offensive linemen in the league this year in Ursery. He's got a ton of experience at left tackle. He started 12 plus games, 3 years at the Power 4 level. He's only given up 5 sacks and over 1,000 pass rush reps in his collegiate career. So I think Ursery is a guy that, again, has a ton of experience, a plug-and-play starter, has good size at 6'6", over 320 pounds, just a little bit older than some of these other tackles. He's a redshirt senior this year for Minnesota. So I want to have Ursery go the back end of this first round here to Green Bay, who fits another need. The Steelers at pick number 27, I'm going to go a receiver. I'm going to go Alec Illuminor from Stanford. And if you know that kind of Ferrari and the Shaq meme, that is Illuminor for Stanford. Stanford is one of the worst teams in the Power 4 this year, and Illuminor, he still just balls out every single week. He's got good size, over 6'2", 210 pounds. He's got a good physicality, kind of fits what the Steelers like to do. He's a good blocker as well on the outside. I think really his main issue is separation, but with kind of this current iteration of the Steelers, if they do bring back like Russell Wilson, I don't really think that matters a ton because Russ loves throwing his little lollipop throws down the field to like George Pickens. If you have two of those guys and bring in a Illuminor, that would be a really nice 1-2 punch of just having, hey, go up, catch this pass, moss the defender, or just be physical in the run game. I think this is another good fit. The Vikings at number 28, I think I've had them take 2 separate running backs. I had them go Hampton and Judkins. Let's just go Caleb Johnson here from Iowa, another guy that's really been shooting up the draft boards with some really good performances down the stretch. Minnesota really doesn't have a ton of flaws on their roster. Maybe you could fit in a cornerback here like Siobhan Rebel, although he is coming off of an ACL injury. But I do think if you want to support maybe your rookie quarterback that will be starting next year in JJ McCarthy, assuming that they don't bring back Sam Darnold, which is kind of a controversial topic currently, I do think you want to have a nice running game for him. I don't know if the Vikings will bring back Aaron Jones next year. And even if they do, he does routinely deal with some injuries. So Caleb Johnson, a really explosive player, over 1,500 yards this year. I mean, with just how good Genty has been, I don't feel like we talk about a lot of these running backs a lot, but this is a very deep running back class. Hampton, Judkins, you have Caleb Johnson as well. You got Cam Scatterbu later in the draft, Dylan Sampson, he's had a great season for Tennessee. So there's a ton of really good players at the running back position in this draft, and I think Caleb Johnson, I'm going to have him go here to Minnesota. The Buffalo Bills at pick number 29, I'm going to go TJ Sanders. I think I had this in one of my first mocks. I still think it makes a lot of sense. The Bills love to attack some of their defensive needs later in this draft, and they need somebody to help with the run defense, which has not been very good this year. And TJ Sanders, he's a guy that can do that. Ed Oliver, he's more of a pass rusher, kind of on the smaller end of defensive linemen. That is not Sanders. He's 6'4", around 300 pounds, and he's just going to be somebody that's very hard to move and get him off blocks. And it's also not like he's a negative in the pass rush range. I think he has like 5 sacks this year for the South Carolina defense. So I think TJ Sanders is maybe one of the most underrated players here to go in the first round. He's been really impressive this year. And so the Bills get another really good playmaker on the interior of their defense. I don't think they really need to touch offense at all in the first round. They've had a lot of weapons really continue to grow and get better this year. And I mean, another year of maybe bringing back Amari Cooper, having Keon Coleman continue to develop. I think they'll be just fine with weapons for Josh Allen. The Eagles at pick 30, I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. He's a very high upside pass rusher, but he does have his flaws because he's not the biggest guy in the world, not super great in the run game, can get moved off blocks or dominated with a very powerful tackle. But what he has is great get off, great speed, and if you let him get on the outside edge, he's going to take down the quarterback. So James Pierce, the Eagles love taking pass rushers or offensive linemen in the first round. And with James Pierce on the board with his upside, I think Howie Roseman will be licking his lips. The Kansas City Chiefs at pick number 31, I kind of wanted to go offensive lineman, but there's not really any good tackles left, I feel like, to take at the bottom half of this first round. I'm going to go Colston Loveland from Michigan. Patrick Mahomes has not had very good weapons for the last several years, ever since kind of Tyreek Hill left, and they've been dealing with a ton of injuries this year with their weaponry. Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, you've got Travis Kelce also getting up there in age a little bit. Why not get his successor and get Loveland, who many people see as maybe the best tight end in this draft? He's over 6'5". I don't think his strength is to be like an inline blocker. He kind of fits the mold of more of what Travis Kelce has been for the Chiefs. I'm not saying that he's going to be that good, but his play style in terms of not really being an inline blocker and more of like a slot kind of guy is more of his skill set. And I think the Chiefs, they love players like that. I mean, we see with Kelce what he's been able to do, develop chemistry with Mahomes. Loveland could be the guy that takes over for that, has all the skills, very soft hands, can go up and high point the ball. I love Loveland to the Chiefs. And the last pick for the Lions, I'm going to have them go with a pass rusher and LT Overton. He's a guy that has a tremendous ceiling. He's got all the athletic traits. He's got great size as well. His main issues is production. It hasn't really quite been there for Alabama. And then also he needs to refine his technique. He needs some development in that area. But when you're picking pass rushers towards the end of the first round, those are the type of prospects that you're going after, guys that have really high ceilings, but just need some refinement or there's some other issues there. And the Lions are really good about addressing really the major flaws on their team. And I do think the number 2 pass rusher might be one of their biggest flaws. I mean, they do have Zadarius Smith, but who knows if he'll be back next year. Aiden Hutchinson, he just shattered his leg. How will he come back? Will he even be ready for the start of the next season? Probably, but who knows how he'll be early on, if he will be the same player right off the bat. And you can never have enough pass rushers. And for the Lions, we're all about the trenches, all about physicality, and Overton is a guy that does bring that physicality. And if he can get some development from the Lions coaching staff, I do think he could develop into a really nice player opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. But here is the final look of my mock draft this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the mock draft, what changes you would make if you do like the selection I made for your team, and really any other draft advice or things I should know. Let me know in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.